You drive to work, you come up the road, you come around that last bend and that facade pops out at you. I'd like $1 for every photo that's been taken.
In the foothills of Hobart sits Australia's oldest brewery.
It's an icon. It's one of Tassie's icons, sitting against Mount Wellington.
Inside, 200 years of history, deception, rivalry, drunken convicts, and of course, beer.
It's got an incredible history.
Cascade Brewery, nestled at the base of Kunanyi in Hobart, has been standing for 200 years. But there's more to its history than its sandstone facade. It didn't become a brewery until 1832, but the Cascade story does begin in 1824, when the site was acquired by a man called Peter de Graves. The location was selected for its plentiful timber and access to the Hobart rivulet, resources that would prove valuable for a range of pursuits.
Yeah, so the site started off as a sawmill, the founders being Peter de Graves and Macintosh. When they set it up as a sawmill, then flour mills, lime kilns, and even a bakery here on site before moving into brewing 8 years later.
A brush with the law had landed de Graves in prison. 5 years that would change his life and Hobart's history.
De Graves apparently had unpaid debts in England and it finally caught up with him in Hobart. It's likely that while he was languishing in jail, he was coming up with all sorts of other ideas to improve his business once he got out.
In 1832, the year after his release, he turned to brewing and began exporting beer to the mainland.
Cascade beer was exported to Sydney in the 1830s and 1840s, so it's been a well-known brand for a long time.
But it didn't just head offshore. Most of it stayed right here in Tasmania. 4 times a day, this bell, still at the site today, was rung to signal beer breaks for workers. The practice was initially introduced to disincentivise workers, mostly convicts at the time, from stealing beer. And it wasn't beer for the faint-hearted. While the alcohol content reduced over the years, the beer breaks persisted until 1993.
We had a boiler house with a whistle, and that sort of went off at those times, and the 10 o'clock whistle would go, and the afternoon then the knock-off whistle, so it's sort of like that. So we had delivery drivers then that come from all over the south of the state, obviously, and they'd line their trucks up, and funnily they'd all be here at 10 o'clock or 3 o'clock or 12 o'clock, so it was a bit of an institution.
Wayne has worked at Cascade since 1984, and he's seen some big changes during those 40 years.
I started in the maltings. At that stage, we were the only brewery with live maltings in the country. There was hard yakka back then, so I'm not in there anymore. I'm in fermentation, which has come ahead in leaps and bounds. As you can see, the cellar we're sitting in is our new one. And there's been a lot of changes even in the brewing process.
Each of these tanks hold around 100,000 litres of beer. They're a critical part of the brewing process, which takes around 4 to 5 weeks from grain to glass.
The fermentation process can take up to 7 to 10 days, after which time we'll chill the beer, remove the yeast, and send the beer into a maturation cellar for up to another 10 days.
In addition to millions of litres of Cascade beer each year, Cascade brews volumes of cider, non-alcoholic drinks, and other beer brands. Cascade's story could have been very different. The brewery nearly burned to the ground in 1967 when bushfires broke out across southeast Tasmania on what would be called Black Tuesday.
There'd been bushfires burning in the hills for days beforehand. And on this particular day, the wind increased and it swept down over the hill behind us here. And before long, virtually the whole brewery was ablaze. Some parts of it did survive, which allowed the brewery to restart very quickly.
And the brewery has faced another, very different challenge.
Visitors to Tasmania may be unaware of a long-standing rivalry that divides the island state, the North versus South beer divide.
The dividing line down the centre of Tasmania meant that regardless of what you did, Northerners drank Boags and Southerners drank Cascade.
Boags and Cascade, those people. No, there is a rivalry.
There is indeed. It's very real. But we obviously say we've got the best beer.
The times of daily beer breaks, stints in jail and convicts are clearly long gone. But the historic Cascade building stands as a reminder of the last 200 years.
I had my 40th anniversary last week and talked about all the people that I work with, which is hundreds over the years, and the stories, the things you learn off them. But a big part of it is the building itself. Like, it becomes a part of you. Like, you have immense pride in the building. That's your beer, so yeah, it's a great place to work.